We are going to start the series with our database, which in this case is obviously SQLite. As you can see on Windows, I have already copied the sqlite3.exe file to my desktop. Obviously, you cannot see the extension because Windows by default hides the extensions for the known file types. But let's change this. So if we go to our start, we go to the control panel, then we go to the appearance and personalization. If we click on this one, and the next thing is folder options. If we click on the heading here, then go to the view tab. And as you can see, one of the options here is hide extensions for known file types. If I just move it and untick this option, click apply, you can see we can now see the extension .exe. If I click on OK, because I want to keep it this way. Now if we close this dialog window as well, we go into the start menu again, and this time in the search field we're going to type cmd to open the command line. Before we start typing anything, we're also going to open the main folder, then go to the C drive, create the new directory here, so new folder. We're going to call it SQLite. What I would recommend you doing if you work on Windows, and you're going to be working on Windows throughout this series, copy this sqlite3.exe file directly to your project's root or separate database folder, somewhere that you will know where it is basically, and you can easily navigate to it. But for this exercise, because I'm going to be working on Mac OS later on, I'm just showing you basically how SQLite works on Windows. So I'm just going to open this SQLite folder, now drag this file to this folder. Now that we know the file is there, we can go to our command line, and first thing we're going to do is to type cd, the same way as on Linux or Mac OS, cd, and we're going to the C drive. And to go to the C drive from our home directory, simply type \, because \/ on Windows is our directory separator. So if we hit that, you can see we are now inside of the C drive. In order to see the files in the folder in this specific directory, we need to type dir and hit enter. As you can see, one of the folders here, we've got our SQLite, which we've created earlier. So now, in order to navigate to this folder, again, cd SQLite, and now we are inside of this folder. If we type dir again, you can see one of the files is our sqlite3.exe. So now, in order to create the new database, we need to type sqlite3 without the extension .exe, then space, and the name of the database we want to create. In our case, it's going to be shopping-list. So shopping-list, and hit enter. Now you can see we are inside of the SQLite database already. Let me just resize the window a little bit. If I just click like that, and if we scroll down a tiny bit, there we go. So now we are inside of the new database called shopping-list. The first table we want to create is going to be table items. So we're going to start by typing create table items, and now inside of the brackets we're going to start with the first field name, which will be ID of the record, and it's going to be integer, primary key, and we want this specific field to be auto incremented. So auto increment, then comma. Next field will be item, and this one will be varchar with maximum of 50 characters. Then comma, we go for the quantity, qty, and this one will be numeric. Then comma, next one is type, this one will be integer, comma, next one is done, integer as well, integer, and the default value will be 0, then comma, we go for date, this one will be timestamp, default value will be current timestamp, so current underscore timestamp, so that we don't have to actually provide the value for this field. It's always going to basically add the current timestamp at the time of when the insert is basically executed. Then we close in the bracket, semicolon, and hit enter. There we go. Now in order to see if this table has been created, we're going to type dot tables, and there we go. fair enough, you can see items table is listed. Next table we're going to be creating is the types. The types table will store basically values like kilograms, for instance, or quantity. I'm going to only use these two values, but obviously you can use as many as you want. In order to create this table, we're going to be practically using a very similar approach as before. The only difference is we're going to only have two fields in this table. So create table types, and then we go for the bracket ID, which is lowercase, which is integer, primary key, and it's going to be auto increment as well. And the next column will be column called name with varchar of about 50 characters as well. And then we close the bracket and semicolon. Now, if we hit enter, again, let's check if this table has been created by simply typing .tables and hit enter. You can see we've got two tables, items and types. Now, if we type schema items, for instance, in and hit enter, you can see the definition of the table basically. So the whole statement which we've used to create this table. The same for our types table, so schema types and hit enter, and you can see the whole statement is here. So now that we know we've got two tables that we need for our exercise, the next thing to do is to insert some records to our types table. And to do it, we simply type insert into types, and we use the first bracket to indicate what fields we want to insert our values into, assign our values to. So we have our ID column and then name, then close the bracket and then values, and open another set of brackets. The first value will be null, and the second will be in single quotes quantity, and then close the bracket, then comma, because we want to add another record. If I just move my cursor here, again, null for the first one because our ID field, as you can see here, is auto incremented, meaning that every new record gets the ID higher than the previous one. For this one, we will put null, and the second value will be kg for kilograms. Close the bracket, semicolon, and hit enter. Now let's see if these records have been added to the database successfully. So select all from types and semicolon, hit enter, and there we go. Fair enough. First column ID has the value assigned to it 1, and then we've got quantity. The next record's got 2 and kilograms. So that's obviously how you would be adding records to the types table. You can obviously repeat this step if you want to add more records. For this specific exercise, we only use quantity and kilograms. Next table is our table items, and what I'm going to do is add a few records here as well. So we start with insert into items, and we're going to start with the ID, then we have item, then we have quantity, and then we have type. I'm using quantity even though it may also be kilograms. Obviously the value, this is basically representing the value of whatever type we assign to the specific record. So we close this bracket and then values, open another set of brackets, and null for the first one because ID is also auto incremented in this table. Then we go for the record butter, let's say, and we want just 1 in terms of the quantity or weight, and then we type whatever type we want to assign to this, and in this case I'm going to use quantity, so it's going to be number 1 because the quantity's ID is basically 1. Then semicolon after all this and hit enter. Now if we use select all from items, semicolon, and hit enter, and fair enough, again we've got first record butter, it's just 1, quantity represented by number 1 again. We have 0 for done because it's not checked. Done basically will represent whether it's checked, whether it's been completed or not, added to our basket already. And then we have a date, which is a timestamp, which was the date and time when we actually added this record to the database. Okay, so this is this one. Now let's try an update. Let's have a look at the update statement in SQLite. It's pretty much the same way as in any other database system. So update, we go for the list, and we go, sorry, it's not list, it's items. And we want to set quantity, just move this cursor, to 2, where ID equals 1. So if we put semicolon and hit enter, now if we select all from items, semicolon and enter, and as you can see, we are now, rather than having just one quantity, we have 2 by obviously executing this update statement. Next thing what we can do is obviously remove the record, so delete from items where ID equals 1, semicolon, hit enter, and if we now execute the select statement, I'm just going to use arrow on my keyboard to go a few statements back, and now hit enter. You can see we don't get any results because the table is now empty. So that's everything in this specific exercise. We can now exit the SQLite, and to do it you type .quit and hit enter, and then we are back in our folder. We can now close our command line dialog window, and as you can see, in the same folder we have now created, by executing all these statements, obviously created a new database file called shopping-list. As you can see, it's for KB only, and this is what you would use later on to copy with your website as your database. But that's everything on Windows. Let's move to the Mac OS.